Hi everybody, it's Barbara and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be creating some high-end farmhouse decor DIYs using items from Dollar Tree. Let's go ahead and get started on our first project. Using some of the wood cubes that you can pick up in a package from Dollar Tree, as well as some Gorilla Wood glue and some hot glue, I'm going to attach two of these end to end. Squeeze them really tightly and try to get them as close together as possible and create 4 sets of 2. Then I'm going to take some spackling, or you can use wood filler or caulk, putty, whatever you have on hand, and fill all of those cracks in and then set those to the side and allow that to set up. I'm using 4 of the wooden beads out of this very large bag that I purchased from Amazon, which I have linked in my Amazon store in my description box if you are interested. I am attaching the wood bead to one end of the cubes using Gorilla Wood glue and hot glue, and then taking the hot glue and going around that bead just to make it a little bit more stable. Using 2 of these round signs from Dollar Tree, I'm going to remove the stakes from the back, and if they don't want to pop off too easy, you can just take a screwdriver and kind of wiggle it underneath and just pull that off, as well as the hanger and the staples holding that hanger in. I'm also going to use some smaller beads out of that same very large bag from Amazon. And I started off with the first bead and some hot glue just so that I would know where to line the rest of my beads up. Then you can run a nice bead of hot glue and put about 4 or 5 down at a time and continue around the entire outside part of this sign. Then take the other sign and run your glue at the edge all the way around, and then you can just flip that over and place it right on top of your beads and press pretty firmly to make sure that all the glue sets down in the beads. Taking some fine grit sandpaper, I'm going to go over this entire sign on the front and the back, as well as each of the legs to sand off all of that spackling that I put on there. Before attaching everything, I'm going to go over all of these pieces with my Waverly White chalk paint. Now, the natural wood only takes 1 coat, and I found that putting it in the beads just works better if you dab your brush down in between each of those. And the sign itself on the top and bottom will take 2 coats to cover all of the design on there up. After everything has dried, I'm going to attach those legs to the bottom with some E6000, and I'm using E6000 because they're now painted and it's not like a raw wood surface, as well as some hot glue. And I'm trying not to mix my E6000 with my hot glue because it does not tend to work if you mix the 2 together. And I'm just going to attach those to the bottom of our riser. Now, if you don't like distressing, you can skip this part. I am going to use my gray chalk paint. It's called Decor Easy Finish, and it really brings out these beads. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm just going to distress this entire piece, top and bottom, and allow that to dry. And I think this turned out really, really beautiful. You could not only display decor on it, but if you put like a clear coat sealant over it, you could use this in your kitchen to set your bottles of dishwashing liquid or bottles of hand soap. Let me know what you think of project number 1. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I would love for you to click that subscribe button and the notification bell so YouTube will remind you the next time I upload a brand new video. Also, visit me on Instagram, my website for free printables, and my Pinterest board. For the second project, we're going to use this wooden handle from a Dollar Tree plunger. Cut that end off that's screwed down in the bottom of the plunger flat, and then sand that down nice and smooth and make sure that it's even and flat on the bottom. Using that flat end, I'm going to drill a hole right in the center. And then I'm also going to be using this round wood hanger piece from Dollar Tree and fill in the hole on the top and the bottom with some spackling. And I marked the center of that round wood piece because I want to drill a hole completely through it. So I flipped it over and drilled it from both ends to make sure that it was nice and smooth and drilled all the way through, and then sand that down. Now the rounded tip of the plunger, I want to create a hole large enough to hold this wooden dowel. Now this wooden dowel is 3/8 of an inch, and you can get these in a package at Walmart. I don't want the hole to go all the way through. I just want to be able to glue this dowel in there to create the hanger portion for our towel holder. So you don't want it to go all the way through, but just deep enough that it will be nice and sturdy once you glue that in. I'm going to sand everything down nice and smooth. Now this part, I just cut about 2 inches or maybe 2.5 inches off. I do recommend you probably should cut a little bit more because it does stick out a little bit longer than I like, but I think it was like 2¼ inches, so you may want to cut like 3, maybe even 3.5 inches off. I sanded that down. Now I want to be able, when I screw this round piece to the bottom of the plunger handle, I wanted my screw head to sink in so everything would sit level and flat on the table. So I used that larger drill bit to drill down enough so that that screw head will sit flush in there. Then using some Gorilla Wood glue, I'm going to place that in the hole on the plunger end and set that dowel in there, wipe any excess glue off, and let that glue set up. We can attach now the bottom base of this towel holder to the plunger just by using our screwdriver and screwing it in right there from the bottom. And you don't want to use your drill because you don't want to split the wood. You just want to get it nice and hand tightened. But see, because we created that larger hole, now the screw sits flush in the wood. I thought it would be cute to add a cute little decorative bead to the end. So I'm going to fill the one end up with some spackling and attach the other end with some Gorilla Wood glue and hot glue right there on the end of that dowel. Once that spackling has dried, I'm going to take a fine grit sandpaper and go over that to smooth it out right there on the end. And then I thought that it would be really cute to create some beads around the base of the towel holder. So I am using some hemp rope, which is really easy to use. You don't have to put tape on there or anything to feed all these beads through. And I just placed enough beads on there to be able to go all the way around the base. And then I'm just going to tie a knot and cut my excess string off. And now the way I'm going to attach it is I'm just going to run a bead of glue all the way around the bottom of the base, set it down into the beads, and then press really firmly to make sure all those beads stick to the base. Make sure you also remove all of your glue strands before you paint it. So I gave this 1.5 coats of Waverly White chalk paint. And again, if you don't like distressing, you can skip this part. But I really love the way this gray distresses those beads. It turns out so pretty. And once your piece has dried, I do recommend you go over it with a clear coat sealant. And now you have a beautiful towel holder that will even hold a pot holder. Let me know what you think of project number 2. And now for our final project for today's video. Starting off with these 3/8 inch dowels from Walmart, as well as a smaller dowel out of a package from Dollar Tree. I'm going to make a mark at 1 inch and cut that down. I'm using my handheld miter shears. If you are interested in these, I also have this listed in my Amazon store in my description box. I cut 3 of those down, and then I'm going to sand them down nice and smooth on each end. And then for the smaller dowel, I just eyeballed it. I don't know exactly how long they are because they're pretty small, but I want to attach these to the dowel to create the handles for our drawers. So you'll need 6 of those. And I just marked them off all to make them the same size. I just used the first one as a guide to create the rest of those. And attached the 2 smaller ones to one piece with some hot glue. And I just found that it was easier to just hold it in place and then just kind of eyeball where you want to put the second one because everything's so small. So you'll create 3 of these handles in the same way. Now I'm showing you a 4th one because I had thought originally about putting this on the door, but I ended up not doing that, so I only used 3 of them. Using 3 of these drawer inserts or drawer boxes from Dollar Tree, we're going to remove the drawers and then attach the 3 bottom pieces together using some Gorilla Wood Glue and hot glue. And you try to want to make sure that they're all kind of even, because not all of these boxes are the same size when you get them from Dollar Tree. And then I'm just going to place some Dollar Tree clamps on there and hold it in place until that wood glue sets up. For these drawers, I'm just going to flip them around and use the back side of each of the drawers as the front side, and give each one of the fronts of the drawers 1 coat of Waverly White chalk paint, because I thought that I would just leave the sides and the inside with the raw wood color, and painted each one of the handles with the same white paint. So the top part, I wanted to seal those seams up to give it a nice finished look, so I'm using some spackling on the seams at the top, as well as those seams where the boxes connect. After that dries, I'll go over it with some fine grit sandpaper. And I'm, of course, going to make sure my drawers fit in there. And I also found that it was easier to place the drawers in there before I put the handles on, because not all of the drawers set the same way in the boxes. That way I can use my eye to try to make sure everything is level, as well as a ruler to try to get those handles to go evenly across. Now I can remove those drawers after I remove all those little glue strands, and I can paint this box with the same Waverly White chalk paint. I did not paint the inside of these inserts because I wanted it to have that natural wood color just like the outsides of the drawers, but I did paint the entire outside except for the top back part. We are going to be adding something to that. Now we can set that to the side for just a minute and use 2 of these Dollar Tree wood trays. And I am measuring the center side on the inside of each of these trays and making a line. So you'll find the center on each of the sides for both of the trays. And then using 8 of the Dollar Tree wood cubes, we're going to make 4 sets of 2 by attaching 2 of those end to end with some Gorilla Wood Glue and hot glue. I did not use the tumbling tower pieces because they were too long to fit down evenly inside these trays. Now I can attach these to the inside of the tray right below the line that we just drew using the wood glue and hot glue. So each tray will have 1 on each side. And this is going to create a shelf in the middle of the tray. And if you're placing it right below the line that was already drawn, everything should be nice and level. Using some of these jumbo craft sticks from Walmart, I'm going to cut the rounded end off of one side and then make my mark for the other side to determine how long I need that one to be, and then cut another one just like that so that we can cover the front part of these wood cubes up and it'll have a nice finished look when we're done with it. And I'm going to attach that again using the wood glue and hot glue. For the top and bottom of each one of these, I'm going to use some giant craft sticks. Again, these come from Walmart. And I'm going to cut the rounded tip off just like I did the other craft sticks and hold that in place to determine where I need to cut that down. And you can just use some plain scissors to cut those. So you'll want to create 4 of the same length so that you can place 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom of each of these shelves. And I'm going to again use the wood glue and the hot glue. And I always like to try to make sure that mine is going to fit before I glue anything down. And now you have this really cute shelf, and you'll do that right on the bottom so it'll have a nice finished look so that when you're looking at this piece, you don't see those wood cubes at all. Doing that for both of those trays. Now I'm going to attach these side by side. Just try to make sure that everything stays lined up at the top and the bottom so that when you put this piece together, everything will sit flat and flush like it's supposed to. I didn't like the way the handles were showing at the top and the bottom of the trays. To cover that up, I'm using some of these jumbo craft sticks. And it will take 3 across the top for the width, so it'll really be 2.5. So I went ahead and cut 3 of those down to cover up that first top part of the tray. Then I can glue 2 of those down, and for the third one I can hold that in place and make my mark underneath that with the pencil, and then trim that excess off with my scissors. And then of course make sure that everything's going to line up before I glue that down with my hot glue. Then I would do the exact same thing on the top of the other tray and just try to make sure all those craft sticks line up. I cut 8 of those jumbo craft sticks to cover up the handle at the bottom, because we're going to glue the bottom part to the other shelf, so you only have to cover up the top of the bottom of the handles. And then flip it over and cover up the top, the bottom of the top of the shelf, if that makes sense. And you don't have to have all 3 craft sticks like we did at the top, just 2 so that it will be nice and covered up. Using one of these rectangular wood plaques from Walmart, and I believe they were less than $1, remove that staple on the back, and I'm using some of these quart paint stir sticks from Lowe's to create the outside frame of our door. Now the middle piece sticks out a little bit further on this plaque than the front and back piece, so that is what I'm using as a guide to cut the top and bottom pieces of this paint stir stick, and then I hold it in place, make sure everything's going to line up, and then I can glue that top and bottom piece down before I glue my sides down or take my measurements for my sides. And again, I'm using that outside center piece as the guide, so everything will look nice and even when we put everything together. Then I'm going to use that same method to measure those side pieces by going to the outside edges. And then I'll cut those 2 long side pieces down and glue those in place before we create our X for the middle of our barn door. To create the X in the middle, I'm going to take one of those quart stir sticks and kind of just hold it from corner to corner, and then use my pencil to kind of go by the lines on the outside frame so I'll know where to cut these. And I can just cut that with my scissors. And if it doesn't fit perfectly, you can just go back and trim a little bit more off. But once you know everything's going to line up, you can glue that first piece down so you'll know where you want to place your second piece. And because I don't want them to kind of overlap, I want everything to be flush, I'm going to cut the outside corners first by using the same method I did for the first side, just using the pencils and kind of going by those outside edges. And then once everything lines up, I can draw the center section to be able to cut that out, and then I can glue those 2 pieces in after I make sure everything's going to fit and line up. And again, I'm just using the hot glue to glue all of that down. Make sure you get all your glue strands off before you do any kind of painting. Using 4 of those Dollar Tree wood cubes, I'm going to drill a hole completely through all 4 of these. And you want to make sure it goes all the way through, because this is how your door is going to be able to move from side to side. So this is the top part of the shelf. We're going to attach one of the wood cubes to the outside corner and make sure that your holes are going from side to side. And then we can attach the other wood cube to the other corner. So you have the front of your shelf facing you, and you're attaching your wood cubes in the very front where the opening is on your trays. To attach the cubes to the back of the door, I'm going to hold the door to the front of the tray and make sure everything lines up so that I can mark where the next cube goes, so I know that it won't go any further than that outside cube when we slide the door from left to right. And then once I have that marked, I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach that right where we just drew. Again, making sure your holes are from side to side, so when you put your rod in there, everything will slide back and forth. So now the door can't go any further than that outside cube. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, so that when everything gets together, your door will be able to move from left to right. Now we can paint it. I'm going to paint this with the Waverly White chalk paint. This does take 2 coats. And I did paint the entire piece, front, back, sides, the door, the top of the tray, everything. I wanted to make sure everything was painted. Again, if you don't like distressing, you can skip over this part, but I did distress this with my gray chalk paint all the way around this piece, as well as those drawers, and really emphasizing on those handles as well to kind of bring those handles out. Now we can attach everything together. We're going to attach the shelf to the top of the drawers. We're going to make that flush to the back of the drawers, and I am attaching this with E6000 and hot glue because I've already painted the top part of those drawers. I didn't want to use the wood glue since it wasn't raw wood. Now to attach the door, we're going to use one of these garden stakes. It had a truck at the top of it that I've already used on another DIY. And I'm just holding it there with some pliers and kind of bending over exactly where I need it to be, and then bend it back and forth. And you do have to scrape a little bit of paint off to try to get most of that metal exposed. And then I'm going to take my wire cutters and just wiggle back and forth until it comes apart. Now I'm going to paint that with the white chalk paint, and I'm also using 2 wooden beads to fit on each end, and I just found it was easier if I just went ahead and put it on my metal rod there and painted them. And those are going to be the end caps for our doors. Now I do recommend using a clear sealing wax because that's going to help that door slide a lot easier from left to right. And I'm really making sure I put a good amount of wax right there at the top of the drawers, as well as the top part between those wood cubes, and then the entire front of the shelf where all that wood will rub back and forth together. It'll just help it glide better. And then underneath the wood cubes, as well as the entire back part of the door. It's also going to help your paint not chip off when you're moving the door back and forth. I also went ahead and dry brushed the gray chalk paint to distress the wood beads and the rod. And now we can place our door on there, slide the rod through all of those holes on the cubes, and then attach our wood beads on each end. And I'm just going to put some hot glue on there and hold those in place. And now you have the cutest shelf that the door slides from left to right, so you could decorate it however you want to. I love how this piece turned out. This is so beautiful. There are so many ways you could decorate this. I love this piece, and I hope you do too. You guys, if you have a favorite, please let me know in the comments down below which one is your favorite. If you enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. Thank you so much for watching. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.